All right, cutting the timer off a little early tonight because we had some technical difficulties. That was my fault at the beginning of the show. But here we are, Jack. I'm Jordan Hawthorne. You are Jack Day. And it is about 24 hours before the NFL draft officially kicks off. And there's going to be some Goodell hugs because he's vaccinated now, and there's going to be some in-person people up in Cleveland, and there's going to be some that aren't. So it should be a lot of fun. Really quickly, before I ask you how your week was, and before we jump into this mock draft, I do want to go ahead and tell anyone that's watching, you're going to hear this a lot tonight. Go follow the show at LTB Vikings. One more time, that is at LTB, like load the box, LTB Vikings. And you'll get great content. I'll tweet stuff out that looks like it's an official trade that I'm breaking like Adam Schefter, and then I quickly have to copy and delete it and then paste and redo it to make it, it was purely speculation. I didn't mean to do people. But, yeah, so on that note, follow the show at LTB Vikings. Jack, how's your week been? How excited are you for the draft?
It's been a little bit of a slow week just because I'm sure that's how it is for everyone that is in a similar industry trying to take some final notes, get some last stories out as well. I wrote a story today kind of saying what I've been saying this entire process since, this was probably a couple months ago now, that we had some of your Ohio friends, some of my Minnesota friends commenting saying no Justin Fields at 14. And now, like, for some reason, it's really odd to me that Justin Fields went from almost a consensus QB2. It was 1A, 1B in high school and in college for Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And now there's rumors that he might be the fifth quarterback taken off the board. I think that is absolutely absurd, and I don't think that's the case. If it is the case, I'd be a happy camper because I'm very hopeful that the Vikings would be willing to take a guy like Justin Fields at 14 or maybe even move up a couple spots. But to wrap that up quickly, I'm absolutely jacked up for tomorrow. I think you and I you can say kids in candy stores. It's our Christmas Eve today, whatever you want to call it. That is us. That is this to us. I woke up this morning and I felt like a kid on Christmas Eve. I'm very excited to see how this draft plays out. I know we did this show last year as well and talked about this, but there's so much unknown still with some lack of tape on a 2020 season. Medical reports aren't as great as they were a couple years ago as well. So I think this is going to be an extremely entertaining draft, and I'm very excited.
I 100% agree with you. I think we're going to try and kick the draft off here in just a few minutes. I've got all the stuff set up. I do have to do a couple quick things whenever we officially switch over, just so Jack can see the draft board and everything, and he's not blind picking, just throwing names out that he hopes are there. But Chris Paxitas is in the chat saying that the draft is in Believeland. He also said you can't trust any QB from Ohio State, OUSC. Chris is a Michigan fan and also a Browns fan, so take that. The Ohio State thing is true. I can't tell you the last quarterback they had that was successful, but just because
Can
they
you
haven't
trust
had a
a
track
quarterback
record.
out of Michigan other than Tom Brady?
I still said the Vikings should have drafted Shea Patterson in the 5th or 6th round last year, just for funsies. But whatever the case may be, we're about ready to get into the mock draft here. A little piece of news that I do want to go over. There's a couple things. Patrick Peterson is going to wear number 7 with the Vikings. That's going to be exciting. And then Teddy Bridgewater traded to the Broncos today. So the FOMO Vikings quarterback, I tried to squeeze into my Teddy Bridgewater jersey and it was a little bit too tight. So some of that quarantine weight hasn't quite came off of me yet. So Teddy, of course, went to the Jets, got traded to Carolina. Got traded to the Saints and then signed in Carolina, and now finds himself up in Denver. Wish him nothing but the best. It's still a miracle that the man can walk without the use of crutches or a prosthetic leg. So, to see him play football is going to be great. Chris Paxitas says, I fully admit Michigan quarterbacks aren't great. Yeah, Chris, they really aren't. They really are not. But
All it
let me
takes
go
is
ahead.
one.
It just see that's what I'm saying. Like nobody's good from a school, and then you draft the guy that is good. And I like Justin Fields. I think if Justin Fields is there when we are on the clock tonight, there's a good chance we take him. And I feel we'll talk about this more later. Let me go ahead. Let me get into the Zoom call and everything, and share my screen with Jack. We are going to share screen one. Sharing that with Jack. It's doing some weird stuff to Streamlabs. But hey, we're back. We're up here now. I have to find a good place for us because there never is one. I'm actually going to do it like that. I'm just going to show one of us at a time, whoever is talking. Or it might just be Jack, actually. So maybe I'm not going to do that because I don't want Jack to get all the glory. There's no good place to put us. So I'm just gonna put us right at the top, I guess. All right, so I've got everything all set up, ready to start mock drafting. No trades have been made by us, before we started this draft or anything. We may attempt to trade up, we may attempt to trade down. We're just gonna kind of play it by ear. Jack, I will right now bet you the house that I close on Friday that Jacksonville goes with Trevor Lawrence.
I'm not going to take that bet.
I think that's a safe bet. Let's go ahead and start the draft up. I'm going to let it go 5 picks because I don't think the Vikings are moving into that top 5. And then the 6th pick is the first chance to maybe move up. So it goes Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, Pitts, Sewell. This is realistic because I think that's how it's playing out in real life unless there's trades. But
I do think there's a slight chance that instead of Sewell, it's Jamar Chase there. It would be so tempting for me if I was the GM of the Bengals to reunite Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase. I mean, we just saw Justin Jefferson take over the league last season, and Justin Jefferson was not the best receiver on his team in college. That was Jamar Chase. I think that's tempting, but we also watched Joe Burrow get sacked a lot last year, so I definitely understand that decision. First tackle off the board early as well. That can affect the Vikings a little bit later on, but yeah, I agree with you. I think this is pretty realistic.
I do want to go in. We don't have to talk about the quarterbacks. We did want to talk about some of the higher named players in this draft. The Vikings have been rumored to be moving up to get Rashawn Slater, just because I do think that I don't. Is it Seaway, the tackle from Oregon, whose name is all over the place in different circles. I think he's the best tackle in this class. I really do. I think he's like
Agreed.
Just all of the stories about like how good he already is. And then it's like, yeah, he doesn't even know how to play the position. That's how good he is, out of the box. So, getting him in, I think that would be a good pickup for the Vikings, but it's just not one that's realistic. It's like saying Zach Wilson would be a good quarterback for the Vikings. It's just not going to happen. They're going to go earlier than what the Vikings are going to be picking, unless maybe the Vikings strike a deal to move up with the Dolphins to get to that 6th pick. And Kyle Pitts should not get out of the top 5. If I'm the Bengals and Kyle Pitts is there at 5, I'd take him. I think he had his stock go through the ceiling this year, so I'm a big fan of Pitts. I'll quickly let you go over what you think of Sewell and Pitts, and then we can talk about maybe trading up and into the 6th, or if we want to stay put, or what we want to do.
Yeah, I think if Trevor Lawrence, if there wasn't a generational quarterback talent in this draft class, I think Pitts would be kind of that consensus number 1, maybe not number 1 overall pick because he doesn't carry around that quarterback weight with his name. But straight up talent speaking, that guy is an absolute freak. And I mean, if he somehow fell to 14, I think it'd be dumb for the Vikings to not take him. He's that athletically gifted, very, very special prospect out of Florida you run some 12 personnel with Kyle Pitts and Irv Smith Jr. That is a hell of a tight ends group right there. And then you have 2 top 15, top 20 wide receivers right behind him and a top 5 running back as well. So that'd be a scary offense. Last comment on the first 5 picks coming from me. I personally, and I could be completely wrong, but I'll quote this and say this right now. San Francisco trading up to that 3rd overall pick, in my opinion, it's going to be a mistake if they draft Mac Jones. I don't like that. I'm not saying Mac Jones doesn't have the capabilities to be a winning quarterback at this level, but we had this conversation a couple shows ago. I think his ceiling is Kirk Cousins, and I don't know if you trade up to that 3rd overall pick with a guy that has a ceiling similar along those lines of someone like a Kirk Cousins. I think both Trey Lance and Justin Fields have a little bit higher ceiling than Mac Jones, so I think that would be a mistake, and I still have a feeling that that pick is going to be Justin Fields, but no one's coming out. I think everyone's heard rumors of all 3 of them going there now at this point. But I think if they pass on Justin Fields there, I think that is going to be a mistake.
Well, Justin Fields, I would put a lot of money on is not going 3rd overall. It's going to be Lance or Jones. I think all of the reports that I've heard and that I've saw, everyone in that building except for Kyle Shanahan says Trey Lance might be the best quarterback in this entire draft class, including Trevor Lawrence, like just in terms of what the ceiling is. And I think Kyle Shanahan kind of looks at Mac Jones and says, I don't need somebody that's going to blow everybody away. I just want the safe bet. Because I do think Mac Jones comes in maybe with the most guaranteed, like, I think Mac Jones could easily go 8-8 as like his basement for his rookie year. I think he's a solid player. I just think that's a lot to give up to move all the way up to 3. It seems it's a little too much, too rich for my taste. But I am glad that the Draft Network does have him going, because I do think that is ultimately what's going to happen. And I think that is it John Lynch?
Yep.
Is that the GM? Yeah, John Lynch's comments about Kyle is going to get his guy, like, he's kind of washing his hands of it, saying like, look, I'm letting the coach do his thing. This is not my choice. It all just doesn't seem great. But really quickly, after those top 5 picks, Chris Paxseed is still in the chat saying, RIP to Wilson if he goes to the Jets. F's in the chat. I hope he does well. I really do. But Joe Burrow's knees will be crying if he doesn't get an O-lineman. And when's the last time a tight end was talked about going number 1, like being good enough to go number 1, talking about how good Kyle Pitts really is. And I 100% agree with him. Now, here's the question. Do you want to trade up and take Jamar Chase and just throw this mock draft out as completely unrealistic, but then fantasize about how good the Vikings could be if that was their offense?
I wouldn't be mad about that, but I think we should try. I mean, and I say this now, and then we drop to 14. We have potentially two quarterbacks sitting there, but I think we should try to be as realistic as possible. I think if the Vikings trade up, if they make that decision, there was some rumors. I just saw some stuff on Twitter. I don't know how true it was. I didn't see who even tweeted it. I just read it quickly right before we hop on the show. Someone was saying that the Vikings have made calls to the Atlanta Falcons, which I don't know. That screams quarterback to me if you're looking to move up, or Sewell. That doesn't scream wide receiver to me.
Pitts, Jack.
Or don't even get me started on
Do it.
Pitts. But anyways, I don't think we trade up. I think as it sits right now, I think we let this board play out.
I'm going to stop it at Denver and see how the board falls, because Denver is now the team that is kind of talking. Did Waddle go? Oh,
Chase.
wow.
Interesting.
Waddle, Chase, and then Sotan. Man, I want to call Denver and try and move up to get Slato, but I also would not be upset if Jalen Phillips ended up being our pick. I think this is I don't know. I'm going to leave it up to you. What would you like to do in this situation, Jack?
I would just let it play out and see how it goes. I think there's a chance Trey Lance comes off the board here as well, but it could be there goes Trey Lance. So we're gonna.
And then went Slato. Hone went, and then hang on, give me. I guess I should look at these. 1 and a 4, 1 and a 5, 2, 6, 1 next year.
That doesn't help Zimmer.
Yeah, I'm gonna exit that. Oh, Darius was the one went right before the Vikings.
I say that doesn't help Zimmer now.
And look who is sitting. Look at who is sitting right there.
I will say this. I've done a couple of these today, and I've traded back. I think in real life, if this is how the board sits, even after 9 or 10, a team like New England or a team like Washington or Chicago is going to be chomping at the bit to get up in front of someone like the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know if the Minnesota Vikings obviously they're not the most quarterback needy team in this draft, but someone's going to try and jump them. I've been doing some mocks where I trade back with New England, get a third from them, then trade back with, I almost said Oakland, with Vegas and get a second from them. And Fields is still there. If I'm the Vikings and this is how the board sits at 14, I don't think twice before handing in my card. Justin Fields is this pick.
Are we doing it?
I think you have to. If you're on board with that, if you want to piss off some of your
I already
Ohio
took
buddies,
him. Oh yes, if the Vikings legitimately take Justin Fields, hate is a strong word. I didn't love the guy all year. I watched him play against Indiana, and I was like, Jack, I don't get. What are you seeing? I don't get it. Like, he's got good athleticism, but his decision making sometimes is like question. And then I watched him beat the brakes off of Clemson with just with like half of the libs that he's supposed to have, and just man, he throws a pretty ball. Billy Biskupski is the first angry commenter saying, "What a terrible pick." Billy, I apologize that we've upset you, but the pick is in, and the Vikings have put Cousins on notice that he's got 2 years, and potentially Cousins could be being dealt maybe after this season. I will say this, though. The offensive line does not need to be as good with Justin Fields as the Vikings quarterback versus Cousins, because Justin Fields can move. He's very athletic. And I would be very excited to see what the Vikings could do with a guy like Justin Fields. But let's let the draft play out until the I'm gonna say like Baltimore's pick, because
that works.
Maybe like if Jalen Phillips falls all the way down, then it's like maybe we try and move up, or maybe we build an offensive line. But he went. Is there anybody on this board right now to you that screams trade back into the first?
I don't think so, and I think the only logical thing at this point is trying to find some plug and play. I mean, regardless, Justin Fields as it sits right now, you go into the 2021 season, I wouldn't anticipate Justin Fields really seeing any meaningful football. Kirk Cousins is still the guy for 2021, and you still need to get an offensive line. I think the defense needs a lot of depth, but you can get depth later on in this draft. There's a lot of solid guys that aren't necessarily ready to go, but we've seen it happen with a guy like Danielle Hunter. I know Eric Kendricks was a second rounder as well. Those guys were day 2 picks, and they've found some decent day 3 picks as well in the past for that defensive depth. They still have some guys that they took last year as well that I think they're grooming along and are going to be playing a little bit more meaningful football this year. But as the board sits right now, there's no one that I immediately see that this team needs to waste more assets that they're going to need to use now. So I think you kind of almost let it play out, and you get towards somewhere in that second round, and we see how we're looking.
I'm going to let that last pick go through. We're going to quickly run through this first round, how it went. Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, Pitts, Sewell. We already went over that. Waddle going before Chase is an outrage, but I don't think it is. They went so close together. I don't think it's as much of. If that happens in real life, then one, I'm gonna be pissed because the Lions will end up with Jamar Chase, and I think Miami fans will be pretty upset by that as well. Sultane is a guy that, if he did find himself in the Vikings range, just don't be surprised. He's a name that you should be familiar with and maybe get ready to buy a jersey for. But Lance ends up going to the Broncos even after the Teddy trade, so Teddy gets to be a bridge guy. Slater and Darisaw are 2 tackles that I'm a big fan of. I think if Darisaw or Slater was there at 14, it would have been more of a conversation on, do we go with Fields or do we get a tackle to win this year that we can plug and play with? But the next best offensive lineman was Vera Tucker. And while an interior offensive lineman is a need for the Vikings, not that early. I just can't bring myself to do that early in the draft. The Patriots get Devonta Smith. That's kind of fun. Kwity Paye goes at 18. He's a guy that a lot of Vikings fans really like. Let's see. Caleb Fowley, another guy. Just get familiar with the name. It's Mike Zimmer. It's his team. He loves his defensive backs. Phillips falls all the way to 23. The Steelers go with Najee Harris. I think that's a good pick. ETN goes to the Bills. That would be fun. Other than that, I think we're ready to stout the second round. Jack, did you see anybody on here that you wanted to kind of say something about? Maybe go into some detail about?
Nothing crazy. It does look like Quiddy Pay was Quiddy Pay the first edge off the board, which I think is everything that
Yeah.
I've been hearing, and I know that I've made it clear on this show and past episodes that I'm a fan of Jalen Phillips when he's playing, when he's healthy. I've heard some more concerns about that wrist. Obviously, he has some concussion issues as well. He's one of those players that I see in this draft that if you're a Minnesota Twins fan, you see on this Minnesota Twins roster, it's a home run or you're striking out. It's one or the other. I don't know if it's going to be an in between. I think he's a very, very talented player, but the injuries scare me a little bit. And I think that if I had to predict, I think that's how the board will fall. It's a weird edge class. There's some people might have their edge number 2, and that could be an edge like 6 or 7 on someone else's big board. So that's a position that I'm watching pretty closely tomorrow night and the following couple days, because I think that's a position of need for the Vikings, and I think they need to find one at some point, and it'll be interesting to see how they fall into the second and third rounds.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. I think that there's one guy. Let me see if I can find him on here. Parsons out of Penn State. If he's that 14, he's another guy that it's like, man, I know we need edge. I know we need offensive line help, but sometimes like there are players that are so good, you kind of do have to just go. I don't care if it's a need or not. We want that guy on our team. And I'm a big fan of Micah Parsons. I don't think personally he'll get past the Cowboys because I don't think the Cowboys should go offense. I think they need to get somebody on that defense, whether it's a pass rush, whether it's a linebacker. They could really afford to get a pick at every level of that defense. So the Vikings, in case you guys watching at home won't hear for the pick, we went with Justin Fields. I'm sure that everyone's mad about it, but me and Jack are fans of the guy, and it's our mock draft, and there's a 0% chance of that happening in real life, I think. So, which me and Jack will complain about whenever
I will say this. Aaron Rodgers fell to the 20s. If a guy like Aaron Rodgers can fall, anybody can fall. Aaron Rodgers has been, you can make arguments about this, but I will say this. I think Aaron Rodgers has been the most talented quarterback over the last decade, and he fell to the 20s when he was drafted
Absolutely.
out of Cal. So anything can happen. It's draft night. Weirder things have happened. Everyone keeps saying there's no way it's going to happen. There is a way it's going to happen. Is it likely? No, but anything can happen on draft night.
Absolutely. So our next pick is at 78. We have a while to wait unless we want to try and have a little fun and trade up with Jacksonville. So, oh, not Jacksonville, but trade up into the second round. So
Yeah, it's gonna be tough to trade up. I think with the amount of real estate we have, not having a second round pick, I think we could trade back into that back end of the second if we wanted to. But there goes another tackle, edge. That's
Basham just went.
Davis Mills in the second. Interesting.
I'm going to go ahead and pause here at the Dolphins because there are some names here that I'm a fan of. Rondale Moore did just go. We grabbed him in our second mock draft, I believe it was. But Wyatt Davis is a guy that I'm a fan of. Creed Humphrey is somebody that I'm a fan of, and Amari Rogers, another guy that I have. I like Amari Rogers. I think he would come in and immediately make an impact in the punt return game. Gregory Rousseau is a guy who started off this process constantly being mocked in the top 10 of the early teens and has fallen all the way down, I mean, to almost a third round grade from some people. So I'm wondering, how do you feel about Gregory Rousseau? Like, what are your thoughts on him?
I would not hate taking him in the back half of the second and in the third. I will say that. I know I didn't like him being mocked in the first round because I think he is a little bit more of a project than a guy like Quiddy Pay. And I think Jalen Phillips, his teammate, at Miami is a little bit more well-rounded and he's a little bit better of a pass rusher as well. But the guy had, I think it was 15 and a half sacks the last full year he played. That is outstanding. And I've said this probably on every show that we talk about defensive linemen. You get a guy with a decent amount of talent into that room. Andre Patterson is going to work wonders with him. So I'm still sitting here comfortably, and I don't think there's a reason to come up yet, because I think at this point you went out and got a quarterback, which we're both fans of doing, but it's going to be tough to lose too much real estate. And the Vikings, I don't like messing around too much on the app, like trading away future picks, because that's something the Vikings could do.
Absolutely.
But we're seeing it bite them in the butt a little bit this year, not having a second round pick.
Absolutely, yeah. And we did recoup a third round pick, which I'm waiting to see if there's anybody that has absolutely blown me away. And I honestly think we're just going to let this ride out to our pick, and then we're going to jump in and kind of go through, look at some of the guys that have went. We can trade back 10 spots to get a 6th round pick. I'm just going to go ahead and decline. It's been too long since we've made a pick. So, since we've last picked, who are some of the... Davis Mills went early in the second. He went to New England, which we did end up watching some... Oh, I ended up watching some Davis Mills tape. But it's kind of, he's a mid-round guy, I think, is kind of what I took away from it. But when I paused the draft and was talking about trading up, the name I had in mind was Liam Eichenberg, or what the tackle from Notre Dame. Maybe it's a little bit of a homo thing because I am a Notre Dame fan, or at least I come from Notre Dame fans. But he ends up going to Carolina. Dylan Uduns goes to the Lions. Basham is with the Giants. These are all names that I think we're fans of going into this draft. Christensen, another guy who would have been nice to have been able to grab. Uso ended up going to the Colts. I think he'd be a good fit there. And then, I mean, it was, we don't pick until the 3rd round, but we have the possibility to do a lot of damage here in the 3rd round. So, is there anybody that has went? I'm trying to scroll through kind of slow so that way you can kind of get a look at it. Is there anybody that's went that you would like to, make a couple comments about?
Yeah, I think this is kind of I shouldn't say worst case scenario for the Vikings, because you can still find some decent tackles. I think Spencer Brown is one that has been he's been tied to the Vikings, and he fits kind of what they're trying to do. If I'm remembering correctly, though, he played a lot more right tackle, which kind of worries me, because that means you're going to have to switch up the Vikings offensive line again. But the run on tackles in that 2nd round was insane. I mean, there's been some mocks that I've seen, and although this might not be too realistic, you see some of these tackles start falling and almost reaching that 78 point. I don't think that was really realistic with like Ray Duns. He's a 2nd rounder for sure. You're a Notre Dame guy, but there's a couple more that Brady Christensen is one that I personally like. He went, and then right after him, the Michigan kid went, and he was one that had dropped to me recently. Maybe it wasn't right after him. Where did he go?
Let's see. That's Christensen.
So he's after Christensen, I believe.
He's after.
Yes.
Jalen Mayfield.
Yep. So there's a very extreme run on offensive tackles in the 2nd round, which kind of hurts the Vikings here a little bit with the Fields pick. But I still think you can get away with drafting one of those tackles down there. I think Spencer Brown would probably be my favorite over Carmen. Or you can go to the interior. The guy on the top of the board right now is the Wisconsin Whitewater player who tore it up at the Senior Bowl as a D3 prospect.
No picture guy. I like it.
Really, really intriguing guy. I don't know if they have him as exactly an outside zone scheme fit, but man, this board really kind of fell, unfortunately. But
so I like the Menez. I'm gonna say Menez. I think that's how it's pronounced. But I agree I think Spencer Brown would be the best pick here. Taking him Oh man, I don't know. Maybe Menendez would be a good pick, and we did draft a left tackle in the second round last year, and then played him at right guard all season. And
I
he's
will say this too: the Vikings can kind of get away with going after a quarterback early if the board were to fall like this because of the how they handled the Kyle Rudolph contract. They're getting like $7 million back on June 1st, and they have like 7 million or so right now, if I'm remembering that number correctly. And I think it takes like 3 to 4 million to sign all of your draft picks. There might be a tackle out there. I know there was some Eric Fisher rumors circulating a month or so ago. If they get through this draft and they don't think they have their left tackle for the 2020 season, they could still make a move like that if they wanted to. But I would
absolutely.
still like to bring in someone, and I think you and I are both kind of in the consensus that tackles are a lot more important than good guards,
Yeah.
even though we've seen atrocious guard play over the last. But there is some interior guys later on that I like. So I think if we're going offensive line here, I think Spencer Brown is the pick.
All right.
Might be a little bit of a reach, but you need. I mean, the Vikings need offensive line help. Is Spencer Brown the best tackle in this draft class? Probably not, but he's a guy that you can potentially plug and play. Like I said, it might be a right tackle situation. Maybe O'Neal takes or slides over to the left side, but I
Do you
don't
want to
like
move
that.
down 5 picks?
Rick Spielman might like that because of that extra seventh round pick, and
Yeah.
we don't have one. But I want to
If
see
I
how
can
this board
stand on
falls.
a if I can stand on a soapbox here, I'm a big fan of Ben Cleveland out of Georgia. He's not a scheme fit. He is a massive, like, donut eating, Southern offensive lineman that just pushes people around. But getting him in the third round, I do think he comes in and he's going to help keep Cousins clean. And if I can, the tackles are very important. Obviously, we drafted quarterback and then we immediately said let's get a tackle. Um, I I really like Cleveland in this spot because I think where Cousins struggles the most with pressure is not necessarily from the edge because he can since the pressure and run away, but when he gets pressured from the interior, it is a disaster. I mean, it is immediately just a disaster because he doesn't have the speed to get away from these guys and put separation between them. So I really think getting an interior offensive lineman is going to be pretty crucial for the Vikings. And also, we're not going to be taking Kellen Mond in this draft because we already took Fields. So that's my soapbox. Do you see anybody on here that you see like that stands out to you as like a we should probably try and snag him up before he goes?
Yeah, and I've seen people go back and forth on this prospect, but similar thinking to what you're trying to fix as well on that interior. But it's a guy right below him, and Trey Smith out of Tennessee. I think he's built more to fit what the Vikings are going to try to be doing in 2021. I know obviously there's a lot of people that say there's some coaches on the hot seat if they don't pick this ship up and start winning some football games right away here in 2021. But he's a little bit more of an athletic guy. The downside to Trey Smith is he might not be that anchor that Cleveland is in pass protection, but he's a lot more better fit in that outside zone scheme that they do run. So he's a guy that I've personally been taking pretty regularly in this spot. But either way, I don't think you can go wrong with either prospect. I just think that if you're looking for a scheme fit, draft Trey Smith. If you're looking to protect Kirk Cousins a little bit better, maybe Ben Cleveland is the answer.
I'm gonna go with Cleveland just because we went with your tackle. But
Works for me.
I think the crucial thing to remember about mock drafts, I'm going to go ahead and make this pick and then let the board start going. The crucial thing to remember about mock drafts is it's not necessarily about being correct or building your dream team or whatever the case may be. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can have fun with them, but whenever like you're throwing a mock draft out there, at least in my mind, it's more of a 4 and a 5 for a 3 and a 6. Let me hit the counter offer button and see if there's anybody there that like intrigues us. Um, Darius Washington would be a good pickup here, but it's kind of a
Yeah,
reach isn't the right word.
I kind of like where how the board would fall right now. We haven't given up any picks yet, and I don't think we need to trade up yet. I think from what I've been seeing regularly doing these, there's going to be some good players. The Vikings have a
I
run of
agree.
picks here in the fourth round coming up,
Absolutely.
and I still think there's going to be some pretty solid players available for them with those four picks.
I wish, and it's too late now, obviously, but oh man, I maybe wanted to move up and get Quincy Uoch, out of O'Shea, however you pronounce it, out of Miami. But you can mark it here first. Troy Selman to the Patriots immediately is the LeGarrette Blunt of the Patriots from a few years ago. Just immediate, they're the same man. I'm gonna go ahead and resume this draft. We're gonna let the Saints stick in. They end up going with a safety. Now the Bengals want to talk. They want two foes for a 4 and a 5. I think not so. All right, they also go safety here. Washington does go
There's
to
a
the
man.
Panthers.
These boards are not following in our
They're
favor,
not
but
going in our
actually,
favor, but you know what? I think we
it kind of
can
does
make
here.
do.
So there's two players here that I would hope for, judging off how we just drafted. Actually, where's the other? Okay, he's not even there yet. But I think this is the point where you're like, okay, we need to fix the defense. We just invested two of our picks in the offensive line. You have our quarterback of the future now. It's time to give Andre Patterson some more pass rushing toys. I almost mixed up toys and tools. Some more pass rushing toys. Personally, I've heard that the Vikings have done their homework on Jalen Twyman. That was reported earlier this week. And I mean, if you've seen the workout videos, the guy is an absolute freak. I know the 40 time is a little bit worrisome. He might not be the quickest guy. I'm not overly worried about that because I think he plays a little bit faster on tape. I'm more than okay with drafting Jalen Twyman here. I'd also be fine with drafting Cameron Sample here. If you can get either of those guys, or if you can get both of those guys in the next few picks, I think this draft would start to kind of round itself out, if you will.
Let's take Twyman. Let's let two picks go.
Cameron Sample is another person that the Vikings have done their homework on. If he
Okay,
he fell right into our laps. That's
there it is.
It's a Mike Zimmer, Andre Patterson pick. He's, from what I've seen, he's
absolutely
in the defense we run. He's going to be more of a project. You can't expect him to necessarily overstep a guy like DJ Wanham or Weatherly that are probably the rotational starters as we sit right now. But you have, I mean, if DJ Wanham comes onto the scene and he turns it on a little bit in 2021, we saw some flashes out of him. Cameron Sample, another 4th round pick used on an edge. Give him to Andre Patterson and see what he can do with him.
I 100% agree with you. One of the things that I like, if you read his scouting report, he's played all across the line. He's even played as a stand-up pass rushing linebacker. So he's gonna be able, whenever we get teams in a 3rd and 11, a 3rd and long situation, he's already experienced at kicking inside and rushing from a D tackle perspective. So I think that's a really, his versatility would really make him intriguing, for the Vikings to go ahead and pull the trigger on him. We've been offered to trade up for, I think it's going to cost us like a 4 and a 6. Is there anybody on here that makes you want to trade up and give up like one of our 4s and a 6? So
can you click the little box next to Kendrick Green? He's another one that I've been drafting similar. If we don't hit on, I think he's more of a fit in our system than Cleveland would be. And I know Vikings fans are tired of hearing there might be a guy taken in the 3rd, 4th round that can eventually turn into a starter, a la Drew Samia. But this is a guy that I think can sit, and I shouldn't say learn behind the current offensive line, because I don't know how many interior guys we have that I would trust developing these rookies. But he's a prospect. I think we've learned that you can't have enough guys. Hopefully the offense.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully they're willing to move some guys around and give some new guys chances and not let Dakota Dozier or Drew Samia just get ran over the entire season. But I'd be a fan of that. I think safety here, David Moore is another one. He had a very impressive Senior Bowl, more of a Ben Cleveland type than he would be like the Trey Smith, who I liked later in the 3rd. But again, I don't think you can go wrong with doubling up on the
Do
interior and
do
then
we
trying
want
to
to trade up here, foam, or do we want to let the board fall and see where we're at 134?
we can, I mean, I think you can let the board fall. We still have a couple needs that we need to fill. I don't think safety is necessarily as pressing of a need as, oh, there he goes off the board right there. But I don't think
Oh, and
safety is
then it just auto took a safety for us.
okay. Well, I'm fine. That would be the safety that I would have taken anyways. If you
Yeah,
want to, are we going to get out? Okay, it stopped.
I don't
What
think
was going
it's
on?
been doing that to me every now and again if like you hit counter auto and then
Weird.
I guess yeah, I think you have to like go back in and like decline, but I don't know how to decline it without just resuming it. So I don't know. I should have just counter offered with 1,000 first round picks from them and had them decline it and me be like, shucks, sucks that we couldn't get anything done. But now here we sit at 143. Well, in the middle of round 4. I'm upset. I mean, I'm not because we got James Wiggins in a different draft. But the draft network decided we are going with a safety. So let's go ahead really quickly recap the Vikings draft so far. Kicked it off with Justin Fields. One of the few mock drafts I think where you will not see the Vikings trade down. But we kick it off with Justin Fields. We end up not trading into the second round. We stay steady. And with our first pick of the third round, we take Spencer Brown, a tackle out of Northern Iowa, to come in, potentially play left tackle. Maybe there's a free agent signing and he develops. We're not really sure exactly what we're doing. But then we get Ben Cleveland, who I do think could come in and immediately play left guard. We get Twyman, who's going to be a good developmental guy. I know we have Tomlinson on the 1-year deal, so if he has a good year and then wants to leave, we have Twyman to come in, back him up. Cameron Sample, a good rotational pass rusher to hopefully develop into the same situation as Daniel Hunter, and then Talanoa Hufanga at a USC. The pronunciations are just on point, always on this show. But yeah, that's been the draft so far. And now here we sit in our last mock draft. I know we went with Chubba Hubbard in this spot, and we went ahead and we made a strength of the team even stronger as Madison's rookie deal is almost up, so it's almost time to replace him with another backup because I do think Dalvin Cook is the guy, and obviously the team gave him a big contract, so he's not going anywhere. Should we try and who are you looking at in this spot? I'll leave it up to you or
I wouldn't
ask
be
you.
upset with Ambry Thomas here. I think Zimmer is going to need to find his hands on one corner. You have the Jeff Gladney situation, which no one really knows what's going to come out of that yet. So I think you have to at least get another depth option. You have Chris Boyd, who I think is like a sneaky good like depth option. I'm not saying I want him starting. I saw a lot of people. Someone, Nick Olson, actually tweeted out and along the line saying if they can find a plug and play edge that can come in and play from day one, the Vikings on paper might have one of the best defenses in the NFL. And I completely agree with that. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that are extremely still worried about the state of the Vikings secondary. And yes, we saw him play fairly poorly last year, but you have Harrison Smith, and I think Xavier Woods is a better fit here than what he was doing his last season in Dallas. His first 2 seasons in Dallas, he was actually more of a roaming safety, and PFF says he was a better safety those 2 years than he was last year, where he was playing more in that Harrison Smith role. So you have the 2 safety positions locked up, and I'm extremely excited to watch Patrick Peterson, Cameron Dancer in year 2, and then get Mackenzie Alexander back home too. So I'm not as worried about the state of the Vikings secondary, where I think you need to use an early round pick on it. If we've seen any patterns outside of Harrison Smith when they took him in the first round, the Vikings haven't used high draft capital on a safety. Miles Dorn is a name that I've brought up several times on this as well. There was an undrafted free agent last year at the position that I think he might turn some heads in preseason. I'm not going to start calling shots here yet because we still have to go through training camp before we get to that point, but might turn some heads as an undrafted guy. Anthony Harris was also an undrafted guy as well. So I think that this draft that we've put through so far has been very solid, especially given the fact that we didn't get back into that second round. We didn't address a dire position of need in the first round. We went with the quarterback of the future. We stuck with our gut no matter what Billy Biskupski's saying, no matter what your Ohio buddies are saying. We did it. We took him. I think that's the right call. I wrote an article on that today as well. So I'm a fan of this draft. Another thing I wanted to mention before we do make this pick, Walker Little is another intriguing tackle prospect who the Packers just took right before this pick. Didn't play last year, but he was a starting left tackle for Stanford when he was playing. So finding a guy of that caliber that was a starting left tackle for a team that's usually as solid, and I shouldn't say that because I don't like comparing teams, but I've done some homework on him too. I know it's a risk, but I think that'd be a risk the Vikings would be willing to take here in the 4th round.
So I think you took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say I think we should go with Ambry Thomas in this spot. He's a guy. He's a physical player. He was a solid defensive back and opted out of last season. So here he is sitting towards the back end of round 4. I think it's a no-bueno situation here. You pull the trigger on him and you let him come in, and like everything you said, I think is accurate. Are we good with Ambry Thomas?
I am
awesome.
I'm okay with that.
I think he can come in, and Pat Pete is going to be there. Mac's going to be there. He's going to be rotational, but he's going to be hopefully an impact player when he does get to see the field. And God, knock on wood, God forbid if there are injuries, I think he could step up and potentially turn some heads with his play. So as we're moving at this point, it's a combination of taking chances on people as well as trying to find diamonds in the rough. As I'm looking at the board here, who's standing out to you?
Josh Palmer is one wide receiver out of Tennessee. He's a new name that is not, I shouldn't say been gifted to me, but Vikings Twitter, talking to some people as well, some scouting buddies of mine, that they like him for a late round wide receiver. I don't necessarily see the Vikings taking a wide receiver early on. It's not a pattern that we've seen outside of Justin Jefferson, because I think Troy Williamson still to a little bit, and Laquan Treadwell, names like that kind of haunt this franchise away from doing that. So I think you'd look for another wide receiver that has a lot of upside, and Palmer is a guy that I would be a fan of here. If you want to take some speedster with a punt returning ability as well, I'd be more than okay with that. If you want to dip your toes into cornerback university at LSU, Kerry Vincent, you can double dip with cornerbacks. I don't think that's as big of a need. Daz Newsome is a speedier guy that I'm also a fan of out of North Carolina. And then the last guy I wanted to talk about, I think he's up on the list a little bit, but it's Caden Stearns. He has the potential to be one of the top 5, top 10 safeties in this draft class. And for him to be sitting down here, I would not be shocked if the Vikings double dip there, even though that goes against everything I said about the safety room maybe having a little bit more depth than people realize with Miles Dorn, but I wouldn't be opposed to double dipping there either. So I think I gave you a few options. I think you could maybe wait till 168 for Palmer and you can address another position, but I'll leave this one up to you, because I just kind of ranted on like 4 guys there, and whatever one is your favorite, I'm more than okay with.
So a guy that has intrigued me, Shakatoni. I'm a fan of his, but he's kind of down on the board. And that's why I was kind of scrolling through, because I was like, where do they have him projected to go? But I'm a fan of Shakatoni's, but I think that's maybe down the line some. I think looking at some, I don't think I want to go with Siva yet. I think Caden Stones would be the pick, because I do think that at some point you kind of have to switch into like a purely like who's the best guy that we could get, because like there's been some great 5th round picks. We'll probably, like, the odds just say we're not drafting Hall of Fame level players right here. We're drafting potential role players, guys that can step up if somebody goes down with an injury, developmental type guys. So I think getting Caden Stones to come in, like you said, with Xavier Woods. Or is it Woods?
Yep, Woods.
Okay. With him, being on a 1-year deal, maybe he's not the long-term answer. We'll just kind of have to see what happens here. Now, at 168, this is where Shakatoni feels like a good late round grab for me, but
We could round the. I mean, I think you still need a wide receiver. I think you could almost go Palmer, and I mean, at this point, I know I just said this at the beginning of the show. I don't really like doing this. We could almost trade back up into the fifth, get rid of our sixth, and maybe like a fifth rounder next year. I don't think the
right.
Vikings would be too upset, and if the Vikings or us playing the GM in this scenario feel that strongly about Tony, I'd be more than okay with that double dipping in a fairly deep edge class. I know, I mean, he played a lot of meaningful football for Penn State as well. So I would have absolute no problem if you double dip, you go Josh Palmer here and you try to get back in there and grab a guy like Tony.
Let me was he let's try and trade with the Ravens. Let's see what they think. Because I'm a big fan of Tony's. Next. So we only have our 6th round pick.
So we do that, and then maybe.
Oh, but we can't get rid of pick 199, Jack.
we gotta.
We have to take Michigan's QB. Let's throw in next year.
If they're gonna do it, we can do a fifth. I mean,
let's just throw it out there.
Not every 5th round pick can be Stephon Diggs. So
no, but Shakatoni can be pretty solid. Where's he at?
173. I like that.
I think, and that's all of our picks, isn't it?
It is. We are out of picks now.
Does anybody is there anybody that we don't have that? I mean, I know you're a big fan of Dowden.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it, especially for special teams purposes. But I think, I don't know, that's the special teams. Let's just be excited about the draft and not talk about special teams. I think that's the best way to look at this. That's like talking about December 26th on December 24th. Let's just not look at our problems right now. Let's just say, hey, you know what? We had a hell of a draft. We have a quarterback of the future. We addressed some needs as well. I like how this draft turned out. I think I put out a couple earlier today. I think I retweeted it on Load the Box's Twitter page. If you're not following Load the Box, make sure you're doing so at LTB Vikings, Load the Box Vikings. And it was essentially, it seemed like it was a pretty 50-50 split. I didn't go through and count all the comments, but one was something more along the lines of this draft, except I had Justin Fields, and then I think Brady Christensen fell, and that makes it a little bit stronger just because it's a tackle I'm a little bit more confident in than a Spencer Brown, but at the same time, we don't know what they're going to turn into. They're both developmental tackles that we don't know if they're necessarily day one starters, but and then the other one was literally, it was what I think is more realistic. The Vikings trading back and just essentially crushing picks are also needs, but I'll just leave what I'm trying to say at this. I'll said it earlier. I wrote an article about it today as well. And I'm going to say this probably every single year that we do shows like this. There's never a bad time to draft a quarterback. We should have learned that from the Chiefs. We should have learned that from the Patriots. We should have learned that from the Packers. The time is now to draft a quarterback for this team before it's too late. And we're looking at the quarterback class next year and we're like, oh, snap, this draft class or the 2021 draft class was a lot deeper at the quarterback position, and this can all change, obviously. But as it sits right now, I'm a lot bigger fan of this 2021 draft class at the quarterback position. And in my opinion, you get the 2nd-rated quarterback in this class at pick 14. It's a home run from there. I don't think you can go wrong. So I'm a fan of this mock draft, and I think we've done a couple pretty solid mock drafts over the last
Absolutely.
couple weeks.
I like what we've been able to do as armchair GMs. I'm really excited to see what Spielman's going to be doing. I'd like to see us move out of the 14th overall pick. If we move down, let's try and get a 2nd round pick, so that way we can kind of even out some of the guys that we're getting. If we move up, I would be even more excited. If we have been calling Atlanta, and that's those reports are true, and we end up moving up to that foul spot, that does seem like we're getting. If it's Sewell, if it's Pitts, if it's Fields, Lance, any of the quarterbacks except for Mac Jones, then I'm gonna be pretty excited because I think those are generational talents. while you were talking there, I was trying to trade to get Mr. Irrelevant to be Jalen Dowden, and I offered the Packers next year's 1, 4, and like 5, and they denied it. So like they're salty as hell about. I guess they do, man. He better tone into like they'll probably draft another quarterback to piss off Aaron Rodgers. But quickly going through talking about the Minnesota Vikings draft. This is our final mock draft of the year. We should probably put the bulletin, but this is not a prediction. This is definitely how we would play things out if
Jack and Jordan as the Vikings
GM. This is we have taken over, and I'm in my John Randall jersey, and and a Reds hat, and I'm clashing colors and everything. But like Jack alluded to, we stay true with the number 14 overall pick. We take Justin Fields, the epileptic, fast as hell, deep ball throwing, and I think the kid's gonna be good. I really do. And I think that if he falls down into that 15, 16, the later he goes, the better he's going to be because he's going to go to better teams. So, I mean, I think coming to the Vikings, he's going to sit for a year. We're going to trade Cousins for peanuts next year, and then we kind of see what happens.
I've seen this all over Twitter as well, and I think how would I word this? If there's some way that Justin Fields falls all the way to 15 and the Patriots get him, the Patriots will haunt the NFL because of that for many, many years to come. I saw a video today too of I don't know if I've seen this before. It's resurfaced from a while ago. I think Fields was in high school. He was at a quarterback's camp, and none other than Cameron Newton was hyping him up, saying this kid is going to be special. And this was in high school. I know he was one of the most highly recruited quarterbacks in the nation, right there next to Trevor Lawrence, but he was 100% right. He was special in college. I think he's going to be special in the NFL, and it would be an absolute mistake for the Vikings to pass on him.
I 100% agree. So we grab Fields. We end up not trading into the second round. We, keep a lot of these picks that we have, and that's why we end up having such a, what is it? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 player draft class. So we stay true. We end up getting Spencer Brown at the beginning of the third round, the tackle out of Northern Iowa. He comes in, he competes for the left tackle job with Rashad Hill, maybe Ezra Cleveland, or maybe a free agent TBD. We get Ben Cleveland 12 picks later. He comes in, and I think he immediately takes the starting left guard job. And we kind of see where the rest of the offensive line falls. Spencer Brown could also come in and immediately take the left tackle job. I'm not insinuating that one player is better than the other. I just think we're a lot weaker at guard than we are at tackle right now. We get Twyman to come in, be a rotational inside guy for Dalvin Tomlinson's impending departure. We get Cameron Sample as a little bit.
I was gonna stop you and you said that. I think Tomlinson is the only free agent that they signed that is a multi-year deal.
Did he?
I could be wrong though. I think everyone else is a 1-year deal. You can keep going through this. I'm gonna look that up actually because I'm curious as well.
I just Googled it. Wait, what?
I think it was more than a 1-year deal for Tomlinson. I think.
Oh my God! It's a 2-year contract.
Okay. Maybe not 3. Wow. I thought, okay, but it's more than 1. So
it is more than 1. Well, that's my fault. But Twyman still comes in with the ability to play, be a backup, and in 2 years he can step in and take Tomlinson's spot if he ends up leaving. But that's my fault, working on faulty information here. Because I thought we just signed everybody to 1-year deals because I thought that's how we were handling the cap. Was just like kick the can down the road. But let's see. So Cameron Sample ends up being the developmental pass rusher of this year's draft that everyone is going to immediately overhype and overvalue and treat like the Khalil Mack. He is. They both have tattoos. Like
they're both built and strong individuals with athletic upside, and you throw them into the job site with Andre Patterson, good things happen.
Yeah, I do think we overvalue Andre Patterson. Not overvalue. I think we overestimate what he's like. I think we expect him to tone a like one of those men that are made out of 2-liter bottles, and they'll like go make him a Hall of Famer. And it's like, not everybody's gonna be Daniil flipping Hunter, but anyway, we get Cameron Sample. He comes in and he will be the next Daniil Hunter, and he'll be great. I'm not counting pick 134 because it's not our pick. We didn't make it. The computer kind of
I'm okay with
freaked out
it.
on it.
I
am
am
too.
He's a versatile safety. Then I know this doesn't mean a lot, and Elijah Vera Tucker is at USC as well, but Rick Spielman got to see him up and close at the USC Pro Day, so he's versatile. And at this point, you get two safeties with not back to backs, but close enough. You get two safeties that are learning behind a damn good safety in Harrison Smith that I personally think should be Hall of Famer someday, but that's a discussion for another day.
And if those two safeties are the metaphorical bud, then Ambry Thomas is the meat. I'm a big fan of his. He's one of those guys that like he opted out, so he's dropping down the board. And I think he's a guy that could have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick if he played this year. So getting him, bringing him in, letting Zimmo kind of, tone him into the next Deion Sanders, or I don't know, name a famous player that Zimmo has coached, but letting him come in and develop. He's not going to play a ton this year, hopefully, fingers crossed, with Patrick Peterson and Mackenzie Alexander and the Needle, Cameron Dantzler and everybody. So he might get some playing time, but Harrison Hand as well. We forget about Harrison Hand. I'm excited to see what he does moving into this next year. But then we end up going with Caden Stones, like you said. That was just kind of a BPA pick where we just wanted to grab somebody that, let him and Hufanga kind of duel it out for who's the better player and who could potentially step into a starting role in the foreseeable future. We end up going Josh Palmer in the 5th or 6th round. Wide receiver to come in, compete with BB and Johnson and all of them. So then Shakatoni is the last pick of our draft. He's an edge out of Penn State. He is also the next Daniil Hunter, and he's also going to be really good. I do like Shakatoni a lot. I think he does have some upside to him. So we get a couple of edges. We get a couple of defensive pieces late to develop and kind of, because we did sign some guys to shoulder deals to fill some holes on the defense, and this could potentially be the future of the Vikings defense moving forward. But I think the big money picks were these first 3 right here. I think all 3 of these guys are going to be big components of the Vikings offense sooner rather than later. Justin Fields probably in 2022, but we finished under the time we thought we were going to, which is good. That's always a plus. But would not be able to buy a Justin Fields jersey fast enough. Jack, let's take a minute. Let me go ahead and send us back to a regular load the box screen here. And get us. I need to stop sharing my screen. Stop sharing. There we are. Hello. So in all reality, what do you expect the Vikings, from what you've heard, from what you've seen? We'll quickly do this and then we'll get out of everybody's hair. What are you expecting from the Vikings tomorrow night? Are you expecting multiple 1st round picks, or are you expecting a move up or down?
I think the safest bet, if I were to bet on this, would be the Vikings finding a way to trade back and somehow acquire an early 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick. So somewhere in that range. It's either going to give them enough ammo to trade back into the 2nd round, or if they can get to that point and trade back into the 2nd round. I don't necessarily love the idea of dropping. I mean, unless you're getting 2 firsts from Baltimore. Like, if that's the case, I'm fine with dropping later into that back part of the 1st round. But I would prefer to stay somewhere in that like 18 to 25 range. Potentially have, I don't think Elijah Vera Tucker is going to fall that far, but if he were to fall, I did a mock draft that had him going at like 26th, 27th, which I don't think that's realistic, especially with how fast we saw offensive linemen come off the board in this draft. But I think most realistically, the Vikings trade back, they make a pick in the 1st round, and that 1st round pick is either going to be, although they haven't done this since 2005, when it could be an edge or a tackle. I'll say that. I think it's going to be a pass rusher or an offensive tackle. I don't love the idea of reaching for a guard in that place. Find your left tackle of the future, address the guard position later on. Now, there's realism and what I think is realistic, and then there's the daydreams of Jack Day. And this mock draft is more towards that. I tweeted one out earlier this morning too. That's, like I said, I like it a little bit more just because of that Brady Christensen factor. I'm pretty sure I drafted Cameron Sample as the first edge in that one as well. But I think if you can get your quarterback of the future, give him a year or two to develop underneath Kirk Cousins, make sure you have someone in the building that you trust that can bring him along and develop him. I think Kirk Cousins would be a good guy for that. I hope. I know there's some people that have said that he doesn't want another quarterback. That's why the Sean Mannion project was perfect in the mind of Kirk Cousins. But I think being at that age, I think being Kirk Cousins, it's time. They're not bringing Sean Mannion back. They're drafting a quarterback at some point in this draft. And dream scenario, a guy like Fields or a guy like Lance somehow falls. Vikings either trade up. I shouldn't say that. My dream scenario is either of those two, Sewell or Slater. If you can somehow land one of those, I'm more than fine staying and then trying to find a way back into the second round. If all of those guys are off the board, try to find a trade back partner, get more picks, and just absolutely hammer some of your needs, and then you're ready to go in 2021.
I think this is my final thought of the evening. I'm going to cut the chat off now. I didn't talk about the chat while we were drafting. We didn't get anybody coming in and yelling at us too bad. Billy Biskupski was not a fan of the field selection. Tom Day said Billy, Billy, Billy. And then we were talking about the defensive back out of Michigan. He asked if he was twitchy. And I forgot to read that comment off. So, Tom, I apologize greatly. And then Jeff Hawthorne said, we need offensive linemen. And I agree with that. But for some reason, I think Rick Spielman can save his job if he goes hat in hand to Ziggy Wilf and he says, Ziggy, I made a mistake. Cousins wasn't it. We're going to let him ride out this year as a bridge guy. We're going to trade him. We're moving up. I think the Vikings wait until, this is my dream. This isn't what's going to happen. But after the first three picks, which I predict is going to be Lawrence, Wilson, and then Jones, I want to see the Vikings move up either to 6 or to 4 and get a guy like Trey Lance or Justin Fields, one of these top prospect quarterbacks. And we can address the offensive line later. We can address the offensive line in next year's draft and, really build a good wall for the next quarterback. But maybe, I don't know. I have this theory about the draft and how it's like a time of hope for struggling franchises. And everybody acts like the Vikings were 3-13 last year. And I think we went 8-8 and we missed the playoffs. And everybody, like, the world exploded because the Vikings missed the playoffs. And I don't think the roster's really all that bad. The offensive line needs help, but it would be really cool to have a quarterback that I didn't just want to, yell at every time he has to play past like 6 p.m. So I don't know. We'll see what they do. I think the safe money is they trade up with like the Cowboys or they trade up with maybe Denver now. And they take like Rashawn Slater, they go up, they get a tackle, and they move forward with Cousins, and we see what happens. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun draft. I'm sure me and Jack we'll definitely talk about it next Wednesday. If not before then, the next time you see me will not be in this setup right now where you can see my bed behind me with my little fan and everything. It will be in a different setup because I am moving into my house this weekend, so big news from the co-host of this show. But Jack, I'll let you give your final thoughts before the 2021 season really kicks off with the NFL draft. The floor is yours, and have a fun draft night. Everybody be safe.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. I feel like at this point I've been almost like over the top and annoying. Like I'm one of those people. I've seen tweets saying I'm tired of seeing all the mock drafts. There's people definitely in that boat, and I'm probably feeding into that, probably tweeting way too many mock drafts out left and right. But if you're a fan of the show, you know that Jordan and myself both absolutely love this time of year. I've been a nerd over this since I was 10 years old. This has been one of my favorite weekends. Like this, this is almost I almost like this weekend more than I like the first weekend of NFL football. Like it just, I think the word you just said, I think hope has a lot to do that. There's 32 franchises that are going into the draft, and I mean, it doesn't matter if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you're coming off of a Super Bowl, or if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars that won. All franchises, all fan bases have hope. They all have their own big boards. They all have these guys ranked a little bit differently, and seeing these guys' dreams come true on stage again after a weird year last year where we had to watch Roger Goodell announce these picks from his basement. I think it's going to be a little bit surreal and a kind of another step in that right direction during COVID times. And it was a weird year, and I think that people can kind of look at the draft as another event in the sporting world that's starting to come back to normal. I think everyone is excited to hear people boo at Roger Goodell and not have the fake fans that are excited about Roger, because that felt off last year. No one is ever excited when Roger Goodell steps onto that
No
stage.
one likes Roger Goodell.
Unless you want to hire me someday, Roger, then I absolutely love you. But yeah, I don't think I have a lot to say other than that. I mean, I'm jacked about the draft. I'm probably just gonna start rambling and saying stuff that I've said already several times throughout the course of the show. But it's gonna be a very entertaining next couple days, and I think the Vikings have a very legitimate chance of becoming a better football team after this weekend. So 2021 is going to be a fun football season. It's going to be a hell of a draft to watch. Make sure you're watching. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at LTB Vikings. We will be tweeting reactions, I'm sure. We'll be talking about other stuff. Hell, there's probably a very legitimate chance that there's more mock drafts that come through that Twitter page tomorrow as well, or some sort of article. So make sure you're following that. And most importantly, just enjoy the show, or not the show. Enjoy